Let me share, and hopefully we're good to go. Well, so, 10 minutes late, but do apologise. So I will try and go a little bit faster, but obviously we'll carry on for a little bit as long as people are okay with that. So, okay, welcome to the third participant, the third instalment of the PMO Bootcamp series. And today we've got the wonderful topic of PMO assurance. You know, every time you mention assurance, I know some people go, oh, but hopefully we're going to make this as informative as possible. So, we can use PMO assurance to drive the delivery success and compliance of our projects, programs, portfolio, and ultimately of our businesses. Okay. Can everyone see my screen okay? Yeah, I am sharing. Good. Okay, so today we're going to cover, basically an introduction to PMO assurance, what it is. We'll talk a little bit more about the governance and compliance aspect. We'll go through risk and issue management, which is a big part of assurance. We'll talk through health checks and audits, talk about the key role that our stakeholders play in our assurance, and then also how we can build a culture of assurance. And when I talk about culture of assurance, I don't mean we're the big policeman stopping everything. I mean a culture of building in assurance and quality as we go along, so that we act as that critical friend rather than the policeman with the big stick at the end saying you haven't done X, Y, and Z. Because if we build it in, everybody then starts to recognize what quality is, and actually our job does become easier. Okay, I think I know everyone on the call now, so sort of thing. But this is me. Over 30 plus years of working in various institutions across the UK, doing all PMOs from a project up to portfolio. And I'm also now a certified trainer with the PMO Global Institute, and I can now I'm qualified to teach courses about how to set up a PMO in more detail than I cover in these sessions. Okay, so, oh, hang on. Okay, hi Anna. Okay, so introduction to PMO insurance. So everyone talks about assurance, and assurance means different things to different people. So for me, the definition of PMO assurance is basically oversight and very importantly, the independent verification to enable delivery success. PMO assurance has to be seen to be independent, because otherwise you could be seen to be marking your own homework. So for me, that independent standalone thing is really important. So we're coming in, as I said, not as a policeman, not as somebody with a stick, but acting as a critical friend. So you can take that slightly step back approach, but giving advice and giving discussions with your project and program manager from that independent viewpoint. And the reason why it's important that that we do have that independent view is because then we can help support the right decisions, sort of thing, can reduce the risks of a delivery, and by doing all that, we can improve the overall delivery confidence of a piece of work, at a project program or portfolio level. So it is key that we put in those early warning signs and we have that independent view. And the importance is because we need to maintain, if we need compliances, sort of thing, and we can enhance that delivery performance, and we can build that stakeholder trust. And when I talk about stakeholders, and we'll cover that a bit later on, it's also internal and external stakeholders, because if they can see, as I said, I've worked for NATS, where we have the CAA, and if they could see that actually what we were delivering was what we said we would deliver, they then didn't come down as heavily on us, because if they could see we were delivering to what we said we would do, their assurance arm was more lenient to us, because they could see we were saying we were doing what we were saying. And then I think we talked about with independence, or I think we spoke about last week, was it with you, Anna, about the PMO rag, sort of thing. And it's often useful to have a PMO rag on a project or a program, because then that gives that independent view of their view of the health of that particular piece of work as well. Okay. Okay, so there's different types of delivery assurance, sort of thing, depending on the level in which you're working at. So, to project level, it's looking at the individual health of that particular project, various KPIs, sort of thing, how your risk and issues, how are your milestones, how are your, financials, so are you doing what you're saying you're doing? Are your requirements? So there's a whole load of things we can put together at that project level, and then obviously at a program level, it's making sure that that each individual state of the projects making up that program is understood, and therefore any risks or issues or materiality within those programs or projects are reflected at the program level, and so up to the portfolio level and up to the enterprise level. I mean, because there may be some companies you've got ISO standards you need to to adhere to, make sure they are being adapted, regulatory standards that you need to adhere to. So again, I can refer back to NATS. If we were making any changes into the airspace, we had a regulatory compliance to do. So we had to let the airports know 180 days before, 90 days before. So again, there was external messaging. We had to be, comfortable with where we were with our particular projects, that we could then put our external messaging outside of the company. And once you've put the messaging outside, you've got deadlines and things that you need to stick to, if you then have press releases and things like that. So part of the assurance that we did at NATS was making sure that our external messaging was correct, our timescales were correct, and we were confident in our own delivery of being able to meet those. So you can see that assurance is at every single level, and actually making sure that you are adhering to that overall portfolio and enterprise level of compliance and standards as well. Okay, so we touched on governance last week, sort of thing, and governance is part of the overall sort of assurance that we do, sort of thing. So making sure that whatever framework we're using to deliver has that built-in assurance as well, whether it's at stage gate reviews or for agile, it's at different, times of retrospectives, or at different, reporting times. We need to make sure we are compliant, as I said, with any regulatory requirements. We did, because again, when I worked at the banks, we worked very closely with the FCA to make sure that we were meeting all their requirements. Within NATS, with the CAA, we had external audits coming in once every 6 months, so I had to show to people that we were doing what we said we would do, and then the other thing also is that we would then have quarterly reviews at your investment boards or your overall governance boards, and I would bring each program in, sort of thing. So every quarter we'd have a different program coming in and do deep dives on. So definitely good to have that best practice, and whatever framework is needed for your particular organization, because what you don't need, it depends on the scale and the complexity and the risk of programs and projects. And because you don't want to overload people with having health checks and assurances all the time, but it's working out what is the right thing for those particular pieces of work. So clear documentation, regular reviews, and accountability structures are very important, because when we come onto the stakeholder slide, it's not you just doing this in isolation. You are doing this in conjunction with your internal and your external stakeholders. Okay, so big part of assurance is our risk and issue management. And when I talk about risk and issue management, I don't mean which is not just assuring risks and issues are updated at the end of each month, sort of thing. That is not what I mean by risk management. That is just box ticking. That's not real risk and issue management. This is making sure that at each level you've got the right risks. Sort of thing, and you've identified the risk early. And you weren't here earlier, but my mouse, my whole computer froze, and it was one risk I hadn't mitigated for these sessions, so I had to start it all again, because I couldn't do anything, sort of thing. So it's identifying those risks early, assessing the risks, evaluate the impact, the probability, and the impact again, also pre and post mitigation. You know, sort of understanding actually if it hits today, what's it going to be like? But actually, if we put our risk actions into place, what's the likelihood and what's the probability of that value? You know, obviously we need to understand what actions we need to do to mitigate the strategies, and one of them could be actually we can't do anything, we just have to accept it, you know, but there will be other actions we can do to actually mitigate, and then you obviously need to monitor and track and update those risks on a regular basis. And as I said, I don't just mean, right, project manager, have you updated your risks? Yes, I've done them. No, actually, have you gone back and reviewed them? Do they actually still make sense? You know, one ways I used to do to try and mitigate that was I used to run what I called my day of joy. So every quarter I would have a day of just risk reviews, you know, joy. And I'd bring the program managers, project managers in, and I would make them go through all their risk and tell me about them, where they, you know, sort of things, because actually if they couldn't articulate them properly and they weren't written down properly, how on earth an external person could understand those risks. So I would just say, talk to me about your risks. Where are they against your overall, you know, plans? You know, because actually your risks could be linked to milestones. And then actually talk to me about your risk profile of your project and how you're going about things. And that way they started to understand if something changed on their project, then they need to think about their risks and their risk profiles, because I think a lot of project managers before then were just, yeah, just got to think about what could possibly go wrong. And, you know, we've all done it, you know, they've all got the same generic risks. You know, there's a risk, a resource risk, and there's we could be late here, and a cost overrun risk, but it's actually going beyond that and getting right down into the nitty gritty. You know, run risk workshops for each project, obviously at initiation, but don't do them, you know, do them regularly. You know, do them maybe at the end of each phase, or actually saying every quarter we will look at the risk for this particular project, because risks are living and breathing, and they change as you go through the life of a project. You know, and corollary, there's always the opportunities, you know, sort of thing, but you don't underestimate the opportunities as well, because I think when people talk about risk, they only talk about the bad side of it rather than the opportunity side as well. So try to build up that overall view, you know, and actually if you do that regularly and build it in, the quality then comes, and therefore your early warnings systems start to be put into place, and therefore risk should not come as a surprise. Now, you know, something can come out of the blue, like a supplier goes under or something like that, but most of the time you can start to really understand what it is you need to put into place to at least to manage those risks and issues. Okay. Health checks and audits, again, you know, sometimes when I say that, it's like, oh my God, you know, again, going back to this is a balancing act. We know we should put enough assurance in that actually sort of helps confidence in delivery, but should not hinder delivery. And again, this is all dependent on scale, complexity, and risk. A small project with little risk, you might not even do one. You might, you know, you sort of thing, you might be comfortable enough just for reporting and just making sure your KPIs are on track. And then if the KPIs start to show something different, then you might look at a high level, you know, deep dive, if there's such a thing, you know, but a light touch deep dive. Others, especially when you're spending a lot of money or a lot of resources and there's a lot of time, and the outcome is important for the business, you'll start to think about putting an assessment framework around that and saying, actually, every quarter we will do this, or every 6 months we will do this, and I expect to see this at these particular times, you know, sort of thing. So, you know, and a health check is more than a tick box exercise. You know, you should have all your questions and things like that, but it's the opportunity to get under the skin, you know, and sort of thing. So, you know, when I've done health checks before, I would look at all the data and start to go in then with questions for the project manager and things like that, and going, you're telling me this, but what I can see from the data is X, Y, and Z. opportunity to come out out in the open, because if they don't admit to problems, how can we solve them? Because it's you've got to be open and honest and transparent. And I know nobody likes reporting upwards of, bad news, but actually, if you understand if there is a problem, you work together with the project manager, program manager to form a path to green, sort of thing, and work through how we're going to get from where we are now to where we want to be. So, we can use health checks, we can use the gateway reviews, if you're following the waterfall methodology, or from an agile perspective, where actually I think sometimes you need a bit more assurance than less, but it's got to be wrapped up in the right way. And actually you're looking at the outcomes of what that agile delivery is doing, so saying, right, okay, you were going to deliver this capability by such and such. You're not, let's have a discussion, and the other thing good for me then is peer reviews. At NATS, again, I refer back to NATS because it was a very technical and a very large, complex portfolio of works. And because it was technical, we had a lot of technical plans. And when we introduced earned value in there, we actually introduced peer review, so that a planner would work with a project manager to produce a plan for the project, and then we get it peer reviewed by another planner, so that they could, NATS had the resources to do it. I'm not saying, it depends on resources and things like that, but we would get it peer reviewed by another planner to make sure that, again, from an independent perspective, that everything was covered and that plan was deemed sensible, realistic, and had all the various components that was needed, so again, this is just building in quality so that you're starting off from a good point, and every time it got changed or change control and things like that, we would also then do a peer review as well, and that leads very much into that independent assessment. So, and again, for example, again, and that's where I said a large team, had lots of PMO managers. So if a PMO manager worked very closely with a program manager to pull together a view of the project, I'd have another PMO manager come in and do an independent assessment of it. Again, just that second pair of eyes, can pick up things, especially if you're working very closely together and sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. That second pair of eyes, that independence, can come in with a very objective view and maybe spot things that I'm not saying that maybe have missed. Sophia, in your thing, because you're the only one, you need to find somebody who you can have that conversation with and who can actually come in and just give you that second pair of eyes. And it doesn't have to be, just somebody, does it make sense? Does it, and what I'm producing, does the message make sense? Does the plan make sense for what we want to do? So it's just applying that lens of common sense on everything, because again, sometimes, especially if you're down in the weeds, it's very difficult to sometimes to see that. Okay. So talk about stakeholders, sort of thing. And when we talk about stakeholders internally and externally, because what we're trying to deliver is obviously for our company, but then obviously for their customers, for their clients, for their regulators. There's a whole world out there of external stakeholders in what you're trying to do. So for me, then it's the tailored communication, sort of, I think I've mentioned it before, if you have rubbish data in and you look at the rubbish data, you're going to give rubbish data out. So it's actually making sure, if you can assure the data through your regular reviews, through your assurance frameworks, then the data coming into a board or into a thing is the right data. You can have the right conversation for the right decisions, and then the decisions can then be communicated out to all the key stakeholders. So you've got that pathway of assured data coming through, and again, if I've mentioned it before, well, sometimes I used to work, my old director said, Sian, we don't have arguments about the data anymore. We now know the data and we trust the data, so therefore we have conversations about what that data is telling us, because before it used to be, well, that's not right, I don't believe that, sort of thing. So once you've taken away that sort of thing with your assurances, then the right conversations can be had at the right level for decisions to be made. So tailored communication, make it visual, sort of thing. Picture paints 1,000 words, sort of thing. So I like graphs. I like, for finances and risk and heat maps for risks, and things like that. So everything is quite visual, so people can see it much easier. And again, when we're assuring things, what we shouldn't be doing, we shouldn't be marking people's homework and going wrong, 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 wrong. It might very well be wrong, but we need to come up with solutions, and ways of saying, actually, have you thought about this? And I'm not sure this messaging is quite right. How about we rephrase it like this? So it's acting as I said, as that critical friend rather than the policeman going, thou shalt not pass. We've got to work together, not a hindrance. We've got to work with our delivery teams to help them deliver. So actually, if we can work with them and offer, from our perspective and our knowledge and our experience, how to help and move them forward, we should be, but in that open, transparent but solution way. What is our path to green? How are we going to do this? What do we need to escalate? What can we manage within us? What do we need? Is there a different way of getting this because we can't use this supplier? So it is that helping the program and project managers to come up with solutions. And then, as with everything, making sure that we use our stakeholders the right way. Who can help us unblock this? Where do we need to go? Sort of thing. Which board do we need to get to in order to get these decisions to help us along the way? So again, you build in the quality, you build in the your way of working and reputation, and then keeping those stakeholders, in the loop. It just makes that path easier, and it just means that actually nothing should come as a surprise. And actually, you're cutting off. You've got your early warning system to place, so you're not actually having to react if something hits. You're already aware of it and trying to do something about it. And all this sort of all works together as the overall assurance ecosystem to help us deliver more successfully and to give us more confidence in those deliveries. So, spoken about sort of individual bits of what we can do to help build assurance in, but we need to build it in from scratch, sort of thing. So, for example, as PMOs, sort of thing, we get a testing plan. We don't necessarily know if that testing plan is correct, but we can say, actually, the right person's written it, the right person's reviewed it, and the right person signed it off. So that's the assurance that we can do. We can't go in and actually review the overall document because we might not have the expertise to do that. But from our perspective, it's making sure that actually it's got the best chance of success because the right experts have written it, building that review, going back to what I said about peer reviews, building that peer review to start with, because and I'll come on to my quality log in a minute, but making sure you've got it up front, who's writing it, who's reviewing it, who's signing it off. And then you can put your dates in and you can put your, whatever, and then you've got your audit trail, as sort of thing as well. So I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail, but making sure that you build in that quality. So integrate the assurance throughout the life cycle. Assurance is not a one-off. Assurance is making sure that we're doing the right things at the right time. And again, depending on scale, complexity, it will, it might be a very light touch, or it might be, more significant depending on what you've agreed with that particular person for that particular assurance activities. Then if you've got that into place, you have that proactive risk management, sort of thing, rather than letting things happen and just saying, okay, yeah, your risks are all up to date. That's not a KPI I measure at all, sort of thing. It's more about the value of the risk. What's our risk profile? So it's being that more proactive way of looking at risks. Actually, when is that? Looking at your risk burn down chart, when are these things likely to, to be moved off because of X, Y, and Z? Again, clear quality standards, set out up front what it is you want to see, and show, if you can, what good looks like. therefore, there's no misunderstanding of expectations, and no, back at school, see me, type, thing on your reports and things like that. It should be a joint process, but it's actually setting out your quality standards to start off with. I spoke about the quality log and audit trail, and I know when I first started out, and I thought, what is the value of this particular thing? It's just another artifact I've got to do and write through. But my God, over time, I've learned the value of, someone calls it, a deliverables log, a quality log. So basically, all your artifacts that you're going to do, that you want to see, who's going to write them, date they're going to get it done by, who's going to review it, when they was reviewed, and when it's signed off, and when it was signed off, because as I said, that is automatic, your audit trail there, sort of thing. So you haven't got to create a separate audit trail. That is, for me, one of the key things I learned very early on. That is one of the things you need to do when you start out, produce your quality log. And I think it's in, I don't know if it's in prints. It's a long time ago since I've done prints, but it's definitely in P3O and MSP, sort of thing. Really get your quality logs in good shape. And the other thing also is, when you're starting off a piece of work, agree a governance plan up front. Yeah, agree what stage gates you're going to do, agree what needs to be seen at that, because not every project will deliver all artifacts, it will all depend on what you agree up front with the key stakeholders. That's what's going to be done. And then you've got your plan of action for the whole project. It can change, that's fine. You can say, actually, having now done this, we don't think this is appropriate, but actually something else needs to come in. You can get it changed through governance, sort of thing. So again, just having it all agreed up front sets expectations, sets what people are going to be doing, and there's no surprises. And nothing is then done at the last minute because you haven't thought about it beforehand, unless we have to, maybe an external regulator comes in and says they want to see A, B, and C for this particular piece of work, and I have been done that, and suddenly you've got to produce a whole load of stuff for that. But it might be a surprise to do it, but you should have all the documentation, so it shouldn't take too long to help you bring that together, because you should be doing it as a matter of course anyway. It's just a question of, you might have to put it into a different format or something for those external people. So that's about building in the quality up front, no surprises, putting your early warning systems into place. And it will differ, depending on your organization, depending on what you're, sort of needed. But just think up, if you just give some thought up front about what is needed, you can adjust it. It's not set in stone. Adjust it accordingly as you go through a piece of work, sort of thing. And then you can just make sure that you've got your assurances in place, then exactly what messaging you need, and then you can actually take it up to the key stakeholders. No surprises. And then if there are surprises, you know what to do to deal with them. So that's sort of embedding the quality. And then obviously within the, that learning environment, continuous improvement feedback, we ask projects to do lessons learned and things like that. We need to say, okay, for the last piece of work, what can we do better? What can we do better? Again, when I was head PMO at NATS, we would then every quarter we go, right, okay, what have we learned? Yeah, from all our projects, what can we do better? And we put that into our ways of working for going forward. Regular knowledge sharing, sort of thing. We used to do lunch and learns, if a new process came in, we would do new training on that. So making sure that people knew what we were doing, and then we communicated it out. So and we'd say, okay, training available, from here to here, come along, listen to it, sort of thing, because we've improved on maybe the change control process or something like that. You now don't need to do 10 steps, you can do 5, to letting people know in advance what can be done, what's happening. So is that always that continuous improvement and moving forward. Training and developing, again, I said I've used the APM framework in the past to help to move people up through the competencies, sort of thing. So again, making sure that everyone in your team have got development plans, understand from an assurance perspective, what they need to do and what they need to learn. And then, as I mentioned before, making sure that that independent review is baked into everything you do, because you can do the, PMO manager working with the program manager or project manager, but it's always useful to have that backstop second, and we used to call it first, second, and third line of assurance, sort of thing. So the first one is working alongside, second one is the independence, and then the third one can be, you might, if you're working at program level, somebody from the portfolio team or externally. As I said, we used to have external audits at NATS every 6 months because it was part of their license. And then also because of the licensing, we had to have every process written down, every process is documented, and we had to show that we were following that process. That was purely in that particular business, because the consequences of not doing that could be, people could lose their lives, so it depends on the outcomes that you're looking for, sort of thing, because even though we weren't touching that real life, in ourselves, some of the stuff we might have done by putting into a new system could have that impact. So everything had to be documented, and where we digress from a process had to be documented and agreed. And then that's part of the overall assurance of that particular piece of work. So does that all sort of make sense? Whistle stop tour through, and I do apologize for the start of the meeting. As I said, I do not know when, but hopefully that's all made sense, and it should be something that we live and breathe every day. Saying that, so from a conclusion perspective, assess your current practices, evaluate what you've got at the moment, sort of thing, and where any gaps are. Then, I develop a tailored approach for your particular organization, because again, no one size fits all. And especially if you're starting out, Sophia, I wouldn't expect you to put a massive assurance framework into place. You can build it, as you go along, sort of thing. Just put the simple things in and then start to build on your, go back to basics, get the basics in, and then start to build on that, from as you learn things like that, because you're not going to go from 0, to 100% overnight. And then we go as far as you need to go. Assurance should never be a hindrance to delivery. It should be.
I've already put the foundation in, but I'm looking at this and seeing things I've missed already, so that's good.
Yeah, sort of thing. But don't worry, you'll develop that as you go along. Yeah, as you say, foundation is a good starting point. Yeah, so develop and tailor for your particular organization, and then as I said before, PMOs don't stand still, nothing stands still. Regular review and refine that process as you go through, and what works, what didn't, what can we do better next time. It's always that continuous refinement of things. Questions and answers. And I think I saw something in the chat. Sorry, apologies, I can't see the chat properly when I'm sharing. Is there anything in there that I need to see? So someone put it in there that they want to call out. I've got any questions? Okay. If so, I've just got a couple more slides. So sort of thing, as I said, I'm starting up this company now. Oh, sorry, Anna.
Yes, it's more than a question. I would like maybe to confirm with you that is the right approach, because in fact, sometimes it happens that we have to assume some risks, so there is not the perfect situation. So what I really try is to give the clearer view of the problem and the consequences that we could have, and then those that has to make the decision, then that they have the right information so that they can decide if they want to assume the risk or not.
Yeah,
because it happens often that we want to be compliant with every process, everything, but it's not possible, and then just I put it as clear as possible so that they can make the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, sort of thing. At the end of the day, our role is to provide the information for people to make decisions on, you know, and if the risk and, you know, have been highlighted, and after discussion, it's, you know, they acknowledge it, but actually we can live with it or whatever, that's fine.
That's fine. Okay,
Yeah,
just wanted to
yeah,
contribute this.
yeah. You know, and I've gone to places where I haven't agreed with that decision, but I'm not the key decision maker. If the exec are happy with it, it's documented, you know, and that decision is documented as from that particular meeting with that particular set of information. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other? I can't see everybody, so apologise. Just shout if you need to ask a question. But as I said, you know, I'm now starting to. I'm going to put some dates in the diary for some courses. I run 2 courses with the PMO Global Institute. One is the CA PMO, which is the basics, you know, what is a PMO and what constitutes a PMO. And then the second one is the CB PMO, which is then provides a framework. Oh, crumbs, don't tell me my machine. Yeah, provides a framework of how you set up a PMO. I'm going to start to run these from May onwards, but I also again do coaching, one-to-one coaching as well. And I think I mentioned before, we're going to be starting this membership forum, which I'm hoping to get invitations out to you guys by the close of play today. It might be tomorrow. We've got one more technical hurdle to overcome. I'm not technical. But that's where you'll find all of these, you know, recordings, the slides and everything. And I also did a couple more webinars earlier on this year, and then we'll start to put in some free resources in things like that, and then eventually I'm going to have a free membership and then a paid membership, so then there'll be more detail and more things within the paid membership, but I'm not there yet. I'm not there ready to offer that at the moment, but that is the thinking behind it, so we can have a community of like-minded people where we can ask questions, we can discuss problems. As Sophia was saying, she's the only one, you know, it can be quite lonely when you're the only one in your organization, you know, and if you just need advice and help. And then there will be, as I said, that paid membership where there'll be further training and development and things. I'm still just working through what that's going to look like at this moment in time, but for the moment we're going to use this forum and the membership forum as a way forward. And I'm going to, you know, start to put in more training on, you know, simple things like what is a risk and how do you manage budgets and how you do forecasts, you know, because there's a lot of people, I'm not saying necessarily in the PMO space, but especially in the project management space, who don't know it or who aren't taught it, you know, to the level I would like them to be. So I've decided I'm going to do that. So I hope you found that useful, informative. You know where I am. Please put some time in my diary if you want to, and I look forward to go in the whole hog with you guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you so much.
No
Thank you,
problems
Sean.
at all. Take care.
Bye.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Right, how do I leave?
Well done, Sean.
Oh, thank you. And
It's
when you're in your
awful, isn't
bottom,
it? Your blood pressure goes up 100% when things go wrong, don't they?
yeah, it's like thank you. And I was like, because I would normally do Control Alt Delete, and it was like, oh, it's a Mac, it doesn't do
I
it.
use it for
In the end, I just shut it.
It's okay. You recovered it well.
Oh dear. And
I felt it in here for
yeah,
you. I thought,
thank
oh
you.
no,
Yeah,
I've been in
thank
this
you.
place. It's awful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, no worries. And as I said, when you and your manager are ready, just put some time in.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll off tomorrow. Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye.
Bye.